How did this week's guest go from being a stunt woman to businesswoman? After being diagnosed with a heart condition at an early age and depending on a service dog for a higher quality of life, she focuses on using each day to fully deliver our purpose within the world. Bunny Sumner Young is a third-generation entrepreneur, international speaker, retired therapist, surfer, army wife, and cowgirl who speaks 4 languages. I am very excited just by reading this introduction, but before we open up the show, let's start with the question here, Bunny. What does entrepreneurship mean to you?
Wow. So I think the definition, first off, I think it's way overused right now in 2022. So I would say my definition, being a third generation entrepreneur, is accepting that you are taking the most risk
Yep.
and the most reward in order to receive the most reward. So it's, for me, that's the mindset that is entrepreneurship. And it's, of course, traditionally, it's about starting a business around that. And so, when we start a business, that's kind of this physical, tangible representation of accepting this is going to be very risky. I have team members and I have team members' families that rely on me. And to me, it doesn't always mean business. I think entrepreneurship can be trying to solve a problem and doing it with such passion that you have to solve the problem. Like it's the highest importance and the highest risk, but since the problem is so important to you, whatever it is, like for me, solving, if I could create the solution for my heart condition, I would get the highest reward out of that. So I'd be in that entrepreneurial vein, but not necessarily, my reward. You'd have to go into what is value and what is reward in there. So I guess the plain answer to your question is entrepreneurship is accepting that you are going to be taking the most risk and receiving the most reward.
Absolutely. You're all in my business. I am all in. There's no one cutting my paychecks. It's me going out there and doing it. Like you said, the term entrepreneur is more commonly used now. There are different definitions of what that truly is. But to me, you have to be all in. You have to be risking it all. That's entrepreneurship. But thank you for kicking us off. And to everyone listening on, welcome back to That Entrepreneur Show. Vincent A. Lancy here. You can learn more about me on my YouTube channel, Vincent A. Lancy, or all social media at Vincent A. Lancy.
This segment is sponsored by Bedrock Business Builders, a small business startup specialist. Start, build, manage.
If it's your first time joining us, I'd like to welcome you. Each week since December 2019, I've had the opportunity to sit down with the founder of a company or a brand to show what works well for them, what they needed to improve on, and every learning lesson along the way to help you grow. You never know which motivational journey is going to inspire you most. You can also check out our bonus episodes with the Gasparilla Overloads and Rewind the Clock series. Bunny Young has her MA and LPC. She is the founder of Better Place Consulting. After recognizing the dissatisfaction in organizations and helping employees to help professionals make the most out of their business and personal life, Bunny has made it her business to defy negative trends and help people and businesses turn that around. Her approach has empowered cultures of organizations nationwide, resulting in improved revenue, productivity, morale, employee retention, and quality of life, all extremely important things, as every entrepreneur knows. Bunny is able to quickly connect with people and open their minds to possibilities, help them uncover their purpose, and develop plans and goals. She is brutally direct with an amazingly big heart. Bunny Young, thank you for taking the time to join the show.
I love that, the energy with which you deliver that. Can you just follow me around and announce when I walk into Trader Joe's, please? Like, that would be hilarious.
I think I owe it to everyone listening on, as we are past 2 years of weekly episodes, to give them my best each show. So thank you for that. But would you mind giving an introduction on the personal side before we dive into business talk to introduce yourself to our audience?
I think on the very personal side, I'm still figuring this out, guys. Like I'm going to be honest with you. I think the difference between me sitting in this chair and having the opportunity to share my story with you is just a matter of time for some of you. And a lot of my lessons are not because I was born into a certain situation, but because I was born for a certain situation. And so the details that I guess would go on my Match.com profile is that I'm an Army wife and Army daughter and Army granddaughter. So I grew up with a lot of discipline, and I'm a third generation entrepreneur. So I also grew up with a lot of modeling on, you take care of your people take care of the clients and the products, and then you don't actually have to focus on the profits. Whereas when you focus on the profits, it's the other way around. So I played a ton of sports growing up. I love horses, and I've been riding, I guess, since before I could walk, which probably the way that I walk, I should have kept riding. So, and surfing. So, and when you hear the jingle in the background, I have a 165-pound service dog that's a Great Dane named
Awesome.
Guinness. And so he's the one who has all the bling around his collar that makes the noise in the background of every podcast. And he's unapologetically himself.
I love that. And I also love the ambition ever since a young age, the sports, putting a lot on your plate and looking to succeed. That is very important in entrepreneurship, to always challenge yourself, never get content. So thank you for opening us up. On the personal side, where we're going to dive into business talk, I previewed your story just a bit to give our audience a taste of what's in store. What pushed you into entrepreneurship?
Honestly, I wanted to be anything but an entrepreneur. And I mean, I was surrounded by it. I have not yet met somebody who hasn't like taken over their family's company that grew up in a multi-generational entrepreneurial family. And so I was surrounded and immersed by it. And what happened, the short version is that I went to college. I got my master's degree through a series of events. I lost my best friend to a drunk driver, and I decided I wanted to make a difference in this world. I wanted to leave a legacy, and did a couple different careers. As an EMT, I worked in social services. I got my master's, became a therapist, and I started slaying it in private practice and therapy. And my classmates were like, well, how are you doing this? And I was like, this is business 101. Like, what are you guys talking about? And what I realized is, even though we got a master's in counseling and psychology to learn how to do therapy, no one, nowhere gave us the information about how to run a business or start a business, or, just basic common practices and integrity in business, marketing, all of these kinds of things. So we had this $200,000 degree with no way to pay it back. And so I worked in social services, making about 28 grand a year. This is like the early 2000s, and realized that wasn't sustainable. So I went into private practice and then started making, six figures and more. But I was trading the time for the money. And in private practice, what I found was I wasn't feeling like I had the same impact that I had in social services. And I was burnt out in social services because there wasn't enough hours in the day and there wasn't enough therapists. And I was burnt out in private practice because I couldn't listen to another individual complain about, their babysitter being late for 10 minutes so that they were late for their massage. I was like, that's not, you don't see a therapist for that. And so I also felt kind of trapped by therapy. And I know we can talk more about that. And so I ended up saying, okay, I'm going to go do what's called equine assisted therapy. And my supervisor had a lot to do with that. I was very lucky and fortunate to have a supervisor that was like, you don't have to sit in an office to help people. We can do it at the ranch. And her and her husband owned a ranch. And I went out there and we started developing these programs. And you fast forward, we had an executive that came out and said, I want to bring my team to do this. So we did a program for the team. And then he's like, I want somebody to come to Chicago and help us kind of be accountable for the lessons that we learned at the ranch. And my mentors are, one's a brain surgeon and one's a psychologist. And so they were like, we've got our hands full. Why don't you go do it? And I distinctly remember the conversation where I was like, I'm a therapist. I can't go do that. And what the feedback I got was, can you hold safe space for transformation? And I said, I think so. And I laugh now because the idea of going and consulting, anybody can be a consultant
Right.
on anything. But in
Right.
my head, I was living in this world of, I don't have a degree in it. I don't have permission from somebody else to be me.
Right.
So I ended up going and doing it. And then our accountant, when we went to file taxes, was like, you have to file an LLC because we have to be able to take your phone and your office and your mileage off. Otherwise, you're just going to get screwed in taxes. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm an entrepreneur. And then I thought about it. My mom had reminded me that going through my undergraduate, I started a lifeguarding and water safety instruction company. And I was like, yeah, but that's a
Awesome.
side hustle. Like I just did that to make some money. And she's like, but you had employees. And I was like, yeah, but that was because I was in class and people needed lessons while I was in class. So I brought on employees. And I was like, you had a company. Like, this is not, you're an entrepreneur.
Yes.
And I mean, I think what I had in my head as entrepreneur growing up was definitely, I'm so incredibly grateful that my
Yes.
parents modeled it the way that they did. Otherwise, I think I would have gone in and looked at trying to build a business that I would have worked for the business instead of the business working for me.
It's always great to have a support system. It's something I think everyone needs, whether in your case it's parents, someone to role model it. And you also mentioned before, there's no way to just teach you how to run a business, start the business, do all these things. I think now colleges are starting to put entrepreneurship classes more involved. I know at University of Tampa, where I went, now they have an entrepreneurship center. All these things. It wasn't cool, like you said, overused to be an entrepreneur, but following our passion, I think, is what lets us put in the 80 hours and just still to be smiling, especially after all you've accomplished. I would like now to ask you how to help our entrepreneurs through your experiences. What are two of the more challenging parts of being on your own?
Yourself. You're your own worst enemy.
100%.
Your thoughts, your ability to make your own schedule. I think, I've had a lot of experience where people think that entrepreneurship is waking up and not getting out of your jammies and starting your day whenever you want to do, which I'm not going to lie to you, 6 days out of the week is probably it. I mean, when we put this up on YouTube, for all you know, I could be wearing Mickey Mouse leggings. Like it's from here up is the world that we're living in right now. And so that's very dangerous because you want something different, but you don't know what you want. And so I think that doing it by yourself is the first risk. And the second risk is measuring the wrong things. So, this idea of success and what is success, and where there's billboards and magazines and self-help books that are trying to tell you like the 7 days to 7 figures. And it's very addictive. And at the end of the day, is it your definition of success? Because, I can tell you that I've reached a lot of what the, I guess, Western culture and society of success's definition is. And at the end of the day, I have worked with multimillionaires and a billionaire, and the success is not in the amount of commas in your bank account. And so measure what matters and take care of yourself.
I put that down there, your own definition of success. And I talk about that all the time. I thought it was money at one point. I went to school finance, MBA, and I got my first job out of master's with the banking and made more money than I had, but I was as unhappy as I've ever been. So my definition of success really is being able to dictate my life, spend as much time with family as I can, go back and forth, Florida, New York, and not have to ask permission to do that, risk losing my job because of that. So I think that's very, very important. Thank you for highlighting that, and everyone listening on, follow your path, your definition of success, do what makes you happy. And as Bunny can attest to, it improves your mental health if you do things that make you happy.
Yes, absolutely. It does. So, when they ask us when we're kids, they're like, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Mhm.
Like, I wonder how many kids actually say like entrepreneur, because I think even from a young age, we're just kind of programmed to be doctor, lawyer,
Yeah.
astronaut. Like we already start putting ourselves I'm going to use the word limiting ourselves into these boxes and forms.
They have these norms that have been created, and even as far as education system in college, I'm a career academic. I talk about it all the time. I would love to go back if it were free, maybe, but now in this world we're living in, we're talking about Zoom half up. People can have entry into different sectors without the degree, so it's challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also what hopefully nobody from my college, actually, hopefully everybody from my college is listening. I would love to go back and get my doctorate. And if I knew
Yes.
what I knew now, which I wouldn't change a thing. My husband asked me, we had a question that was like, what's a regret that you have? And I only have one regret in my life, and it has absolutely nothing to do with my marriage or my business. So I wouldn't change anything about that learning experience, but I have learned more from people and relationships like ours than I ever did sitting in a classroom. By the time it hits the textbook, and that's showing how old I am, by the time it hits whatever kind of like virtual platform you're learning on, it's already outdated. And so, and the relationships are the most valuable currency in business.
100%. Shout out to Tony Alexander, someone who's been on my shows, a friend. Your net worth is your network.
Yes. Yeah, we have a masterclass on our website that's called Net Worth, or Network to Net Worth.
Be sure
I totally agree.
Be sure to stay tuned to the end of the episode. She's going to share that website for you to go on there and learn all about money. But before we do that, I want to ask you what your greatest lesson learned is, and what did it teach you, or greatest failure, whether it be business or that story you just briefly touched on.
I'm going to tell you that my greatest dumpster fire is actually what I'm sitting in right now. So it's a co-working space that has on-site childcare. And so in 2016, I was working, I was on a plane 32 weeks out of the year. And I had my first daughter in 2011, and we had some infertility issues. And so I knew I was going to be having my second daughter, luckily, in 2017. And so I was working out of a co-working space in Denver, Colorado. And I was thinking, I was brought to my mom's work. I was brought to my grandfather's trucking company. And, like kids, there was enough love there and enough support and enough safety, even in a like trucking environment, that we got to learn these lessons and got to, learn about finances and stuff. And so I said, what if you could bring your kids to work? Like, what if that was the norm? So I came up with the idea, I came up with the dream. I took on business partners that I believed had the same shared values and strengths in areas that I didn't have.
Like
Dennis,
that.
You can't snore, buddy. The audio engineer is going to be like, what is that?
I don't even hear it, so it's okay.
So I ended up getting in a really horrible car accident. And I realized that my business partners didn't care about me. They cared about the fact that I had this idea for the business, and they were along for the ride. And they ended up leaving me with the business. And one of them took the money out of the bank account and it was just awful. Like these people that I had trusted, and it ended up being awful. And I had this moment where I gathered up all of our members that we had for the co-working space. And I said, we have three options. I can get investors and bring on new partners. I can take on all the debt myself and try to do this myself, but I'm recovering from this car accident and I have a brain injury. And I also have 4 other companies that I'm running and trying to keep afloat, and my family, or I can sell it. What do you guys want me to do? And they came up with some of the most brilliant ideas. And one of the members' wives actually stepped in and said, I would like to buy it. And I wouldn't be sitting here today if it wasn't for her. And the lesson that I learned was, you can have the idea and hold the vision, but release the how, because it's more beautiful than I could have ever made it. Like it's more robust, and she has an interior design background and all of this kind of stuff. And she put her heart and soul into it, where I would have been distracted with my other companies and my healing from the car accident. And so it's like, I come up with this, and I got this from my coach, but high engagement, low attachment. And so in order for something to be a success, it doesn't mean you have to do it. So that was the failure and the lesson.
And I like what you said there, and it can go back to what you said before, where you brought somebody on to complement your strengths, you know, your weaknesses and strengths. Say, well said. I can't wait for this next part of the show now. If you could sit down with any entrepreneur, dead or alive, Bunny, who are you choosing?
My grandfather. Yeah. And it's very selfish, you know, and it's also very selfless. Like my grandfather, I don't know that by definition he would be the best. Anytime I get asked this on a podcast show, it's always him, just because I want more time with the man. You know, he never got to meet my kids, and I know beyond shadow of a doubt that he's proud of me. And he moved his entire family from New York City, 4 kids, and I think they had 2 dogs at the time, maybe a cat. I don't know. His stories grow, and so we're just gonna try to check with that. But he grew up in a family where they didn't have money for souvenirs, and so they collected rocks when they went on trips, and like made a huge deal about these rocks. And he moved his entire family on from across the country to California to open the Toys R Us's on the West Coast. And so he had a $60,000 job in, you know, the late 60s, which was just incredible. He was living in a place called Palos Verdes, which is not cheap. And he quit it all to pursue starting a restaurant, and went bankrupt because he knew nothing about running a restaurant. And then he moved in with, it's not that he was too prideful. He asked for help. He moved in with his brother-in-law, and then he asked his brother-in-law for a loan to start a trucking company, which I'm pretty sure he knew less about trucking than he did about a restaurant. And yet the trucking company is still going today. Like he has clients like Disney and Technicolor, 3M, Procter and Gamble, because his resilience, he just didn't quit. And it's like, my one question for him, if I'm asking him as an entrepreneur and not just loving on him as his like fangirl granddaughter, would be like, how did you block out the noise from everybody who just told you how crazy you were for walking away from this job and moving your family across the country? And I just recently went back to California for my baby cousin's baby shower. And I went by their old house, and from the front of the road to the door of the house is about 45, I don't know how many feet of rocks. And these are rocks that he collected the day he proposed to my grandmother, when he was fighting in Korea in the army, the day I was born, the day my parents got married. Him and I went and collected rocks. And so it's like, how did you have the sense to know that rocks were important and money wasn't, and shut out the noise of all the people who are like, I don't know if any of the listeners are familiar with Don Quixote, Man of La Mancha. My grandfather chased he won. We had a packed house for his memorial. It was standing room only. There are people standing outside. And I think that's success.
I love that. And I also admire the relationship you have with your grandparents. My grandmother is a big part of my life as well. And I think it's a great example of the best things in life you can't buy. They're not expensive toys. They're not expensive objects, although they are nice. But thank you for sharing that answer. I want to now look into the future with you. What are you working on right now? What are you going to continue to do in entrepreneurship? What can our listeners expect?
So what I'm working on right now is I'm moving my kids to France for a while. So I want them to be able to have a cultural experience. I raised my daughter when she was younger. I only spoke French to her. And so kind of a French immersion. And so I want her to know, she's been to France several times, but I want her to know it's not some weird thing mom does, that like there's something other than America out there. And I think it's a great time to reconnect with culture. And as far as, let's see, what can I tell you that I'm working on? we have well, I guess right now we have a 30-day like kickstart. I think sometimes the hardest thing is to get started.
Mhm.
And so I created a psychology based and business backed, which is my brand. It's called Unstuck in 30, and it's just a 30-day, like,
Like that.
you can choose text messages or emails that will just, get you started on whatever your path is. And then I'm huge into female investing. I'm huge into, creating more female leadership in the investment world. And so I invested in a piece of technology that hopefully will be changing the world pretty soon.
I look forward to it. You'll have to keep me in the loop so we can get you back on the show for a Rewind the Clock episode. Let our audience know everything you're working on. I think it's a perfect time to now jump into the spotlight story. If it's your first show, this is the part of the episode where my guest and I go over another entrepreneur's journey. And today we have our guest take on it, as we have a stunt woman turned businesswoman on the show today. I tried to find another, and I did, in April Sutton.
Yes, April's amazing. So, my husband is the true stunt professional. And what I will tell you about um, what I know about April, and then what I know about entrepreneurship and being a stunt woman, what do those things have to do with each other? Being a stunt woman, being a stunt professional taught me how to trust a team. It taught me how to
Right.
really look into risk assessment and figure out how to do something incredibly dangerous and incredibly stupid in a safe manner. And also, trust but verify. So, somebody else sets up your equipment, you are still going to do it. And also what the audience sees versus what you're doing as a professional.
Right.
So, and you're seeing a 45-minute show or whatever it is. If you're doing a live action show, you're seeing a 4-second battle. One of our friends, Maria, was one of the stunt women in Black Panther and Wonder Woman.
Cool.
And she's amazing. I'm 6'3". She's like 5'2", maybe. And so I love when we get together, and just watching the amount of work that she put into like a 4-second scene. Really, I equate that a lot to building a business, and people call like unicorns and overnight successes. And there's a lot of work that goes into whatever it is that you're watching on Netflix or whatever. Netflix is not sponsoring this episode, whatever streaming service that you're watching. And so with April, a couple things that I want to highlight about her story is, again, going back to the network. It was the people. It was the vision. I don't know that I want to be a stunt woman, but I don't want to be where I am right now. And I'm willing to try it. And I'm willing to put my all into it. She had that one shot at getting it right. And she didn't do it to impress somebody. Remember that. She didn't do it to impress the director or impress the staff. She did it to give her all and do it the best that she could. And at the end of the day, if they came back and they said, no, I don't think that you're the right fit, great. Thank you for that. And receive any feedback that you can, anytime you can receive any feedback, because it only helps you grow and become better. And she really was like, I'm following the doors that are opening for me, even though it doesn't look like what I thought my life would be and what my life would look like. And so I want to highlight the resilience. I want to highlight the relationships that she, the fact that she asked for coaching and mentorship, even, and I think it was like $10 that she paid. So ask the questions. If somebody emails me and they're like, Bunny, I don't have the money right now, but I guarantee you I'm going to have, I'm going to get an Oscar for this. Like, tell them your story and ask for help. We don't do this alone. I haven't, I can speak for myself. I have not gotten to this place by myself.
I found in my experiences that if you're willing to ask somebody a question, they're probably going to be willing to help you. They may not be in the position to buy something, like you said, but they may be willing to help you. And I love the analysis there on April Sutton. I'm going to share a bit from this article now, and it talks about how she pulled herself out of poverty and built her own career in a different light. Again, she's a stunt woman that Bunny just explained. Here's an excerpt from it, and it really inspired me. My senior year of high school, I quickly gained 10 pounds, which I noticed when I saw a picture of myself. That hit me like, wow, I do not want to be that way. I didn't know what to do. I started working out with a friend of mine who was a track athlete, and at first, I could barely keep up. She went away to college, and I kept working out on my own, increasing the intensity. A bodybuilder at the gym asked if I wanted help. He started training me a couple of days a week and taught me how to eat clean. Again, this goes back to what Bunny just said, asking questions, asking for help. In just a few months, I started noticing crazy results. My friends would start complimenting me on my muscles, like, hey, you're ripped, girl. And they asked me to train them. They paid me $10 or $20, which was a lot back then, she said. Looked into scholarships and grants, got a full ride into Robert Morris University to major in fitness and exercise. I think it's incredible from being homeless, just asking questions, getting out there.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you knew of her story. I've been really trying to find stories that will resonate with my guests. And I share sometimes
Yeah.
that in the beginning of my show, I would just Google, different entrepreneurs' names and match them up, and they didn't have much relevancy. So I'm glad you had a chance to add some value to that. Learning lessons, of course, in entrepreneurship. You can't just know how to do everything right the first time. But I want to thank you so much, Bunny, for that and
Yeah.
everything you've done to inspire our audience today. I really look forward to all of the next steps from you, maybe a new technology that disrupts the world. I can't wait to hear more about it. Where can everybody find you, your website, social media, you name it?
So website is either bunnyyoung.com or betterplaceconsulting.com. A betterplaceconsulting.com is where you're going to have all of the free stuff that I could possibly ever give you. All the greatest hits if I was the Eagles, right? And then
Like
we
that.
have a YouTube channel that is hundreds of hours of free coaching and free experience shares, similar to what we just went through. On Instagram, it's at Bunny Has Six Legs because, of course, Guinness, the service dog. And on Facebook, we have our very own Difference Makers group for individuals that want to focus on both income and impact. So those are all of the places.
Thank you for sharing that. Again, thank you for stopping by. While you are on the internet, be sure to check us out too. We are that entrepreneur show on all social media besides Twitter because of the character limit. We are at Podcasts by Lancey. Of course, I am at Vincent A. Lancey on all social media, YouTube, and my website is vincentalancy.com. It's time to end the show with the quote when asked how he stays center and focused. I'm always craving balance because stunt work can be intense. Personal training can be intense. Training myself can be intense. So I try to find things that will slow my mind down, center myself, and meditate. Thank you for stopping by, and we will see you next Friday on another episode of That Entrepreneur Show. See you soon, Bunny.
Bye. Thank you so much.